Brie, I just wanted to start with a quick question for you. The documentary subjects are called heroes. I was curious, is there any connection to your role as Captain Marvel with the decision to call everybody a hero?
They're called heroes because that's what they are, because they're incredibly brave, courageous, beautiful, perfect angels that have a unique and special skill that they are bringing to the world. That is why they are heroes, because they are my heroes.
What was it like stepping back into this story, having to reenact some of these moments for you?
That's a very good question. For me, it was sort of like interesting because I was brought back to that moment in time, but then I was also like thinking about how much I've grown. So I was in a position where I could like reflect on the fact that at that moment I felt this way, but I've gotten like so much perspective as an adult. I've healed so much, and I can look back at that moment and be like, wow, like I've gone places. So it was a very rewarding experience to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think rarely after we leave a place or a time or a space do we get the chance to go back to it and revisit it from an outside perspective. And some of the scenes in my episode that I revisited were very hard and life changing for me in the moment. And being able to revisit those and just be able to think I made it and I'm still here and I'm glad that I'm still here was such a positive experience.
I mean, it's really crazy, but I think there's some value in that. Like I've talked with the other heroes about this. It just felt like 2 weeks long of like therapy because it was like unpacking so many things that had happened in the past and realizing how they truly impacted me, not only then, but as a person now. Like, for example, the whole like scene in the classroom, for example, like that, like shook me to my core at the time and like really changed the way that I thought about myself. But looking back at it now, I understand why it was so formative. And I've been able to heal and grow from so many of those things. It was a really great experience. It was also, I think, really refreshing to be able to view it from a different perspective because the perspective that I looked at them at that point were either distinctly positive or negative, and being able to view it from a more neutral place and seeing how it fit into the grand scheme of things, I think was really rewarding.
I honestly, you would think it would be difficult emotionally, but it was just kind of a trip, like a blast to the past where I like looked down at myself and I was wearing, they put me in clothes that were kind of scuffed up and a little dirty and torn shirt or something. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this is so crazy. And it made me just more introspective about my own journey and more how far I guess I had come.
I think that being able to kind of like go back into my past and be able to reenact moments that, were definitely, hard for me growing up. I think in a way I really found strength in being able to reenact those moments and just being able to tell my story, because I just felt like sharing my story was so empowering, because I was hoping that, somebody could look at our episode, look at our show, and kind of realize just how beautiful being different is and just how beautiful our own journey is. And so I think that was definitely just a very cathartic experience. And I was so grateful to be able to kind of, be able to share my story in that way.
Growing up, there were definitely a lot of trauma points that I experienced as a young queer and trans kid. And we've talked about this. I think it's definitely put me in a great place now to be able to go back to those places with a bit of disconnection and a bit of separation, and reminding myself how I got here now. And I think of these opportunities of going back in time, not only as gifts to ourselves to experience that, but I am really excited to experience the gifts from Emily, from Alex, from everybody else on the cast, of being able to see these moments that they grow up. Because when we came to this show, when we came to the space together, we didn't know anything about each other. Some of us were mutuals and some of us had a little bit of understanding, but I'm really excited to unpack the gift of their growing up experiences.
Some of the moments that were reenacted were tough moments in my life, but going back and reenacting them, there was disconnect because I've grown so much since then. And for me, I felt good about reenacting those scenes because I know that there are other kids who are going through similar moments who hopefully, in seeing that they're not alone, will be inspired to take the reins and figure things out.
For all the directors, I was curious to know, what was it particularly about the heroes that you directed that drew you to their story? And did you learn anything from going through their journey with them?
With Emily, I'm 35, and for probably 30 years of my life, I had issues accepting my disabled identity. And Emily at 16 decided to create a community for disabled teens. And I'm like, if she was around when I was that young, it would have changed my life. So it's someone who, despite sometimes feeling like she couldn't speak up or use her voice, or, the struggles that she went through, she still pushed forward to create something to help the community. And I think that's amazing. And I can't wait to see where she's at when she's my age.
Yeah, I think something that really stood out for me was it was this constant reminder from all the subjects, was just like reevaluating my own ideas of what extraordinary means. And like, all of these subjects are so well spoken and so sort of overtly successful. Gavin was valedictorian, for example, but like, I think the thing that was actually most extraordinary about them were just deciding to accept help or deciding to keep going. And like, I think it was, for me, I'm also in my 30s and just someone who's like, as we all are in these sort of ambitious fields where you kind of are chasing these sort of outward markers of success. It's like it was this very nice reminder for me of just like, we just redefining what the mountaintop actually is, which is sort of having a sense of self, having a sense of community, and having healthy relationships with both is sort of actually the mountaintop. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add to that. Kishori and I directed Alex's episode, which is about depression and mental health. But one of the things, Kishori is one of the first producers I brought onto the project. I show ran the series as well. And we were constantly talking about redefining exceptionalism and the whole idea of bringing young people to the forefront. Like, you decide worth when you say which stories deserve to be told. And so when we were telling all of these stories, we were redefining what that value actually was. And that was really exciting. Alex's story in particular, for me, I had actually made a short film with Alex a few years ago when she was just in middle school. And so I caught up with her again when we were doing this. And her story had stuck out to me from the time that I made that years ago with her. And she had only grown in her kind of mental health advocacy and journey since then. And so it was like a really wonderful way to partner back up. And Kishori and I were both extremely passionate about mental health, particularly, and with very personal experiences with depression as well. And so being able to tell Alex's story was really important in a way that Kishori and I really bonded over during the creation of the series overall.
One thing that I really felt in working with Athena is that, like, we grew up, a lot of us, grew up in a generation at a time where so much of the things that we were going through were shrouded in shame and secrecy. And we didn't know a world in which we didn't have to just accept, what an ideal body type was, or what like any of those things. And what I see with a lot of these heroes, the young heroes that we've been working with, is that they are more willing than I think we even knew was possible to sort of just reject the premise, of those statements, and really find their own communities and find, a way to heal themselves and in turn, help heal us. That's completely outside of, the system that we all just have accepted, is the way that we have to deal with things. And that was really, really remarkable to me. I mean, I didn't even know an organization like the Body Positive existed before I met Athena, and the radical approach that the Body Positive and Athena's work has to looking at body image and body positivity. It's just so different, than sort of the medical pathologized, like, healing of eating disorders and, things like that. It was just remarkable to me. And I think that was like one of the biggest things that I learned, is that sometimes you can just reject the premise, of the things that we've internalized and start from there, as a place of rebuilding, as opposed to trying to, look at yourself as sort of a cause to be healed, or a cause to be fixed. And that was really remarkable, really liberating, actually.
I was definitely drawn to Vanessa's story, being having come to the US as a young African woman or from the continent, sort of first generation. So there was a lot of parallels. We also both went to NYU, which is another wonderful parallel. And but just so impressed by her, just how clear she was on what she experienced, what that meant, just like she had a sort of depth of reflection that I don't think I quite had at that age. And that was just something that I wanted to celebrate, and celebrate with her and her parents, who were also really wonderful and supportive, in the show, in the making of the show, and our clear reflection through Vanessa. So that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to work with her.
For me, Amiri just blew me away when I saw their audition tape, for many reasons. I'm a Black gay man myself, Black queer person. And when I was Amiri's age, not that long ago, but some time ago, I didn't really have anybody to look at, to a smart, young, Black queer person who's like actually able to apply their knowledge in the world and make some sort of way for themselves, even as they deal with the trouble of being young, Black, and queer in this society. So when I saw that all of the things that gave me trouble at that age, Amiri put his time into finding some sort of solution for, or some sort of way to actively work it through. And so honestly, what I learned from this experience is that I can do that more, that I can actually be more present and more in my flesh and more conscious, and that the things that feel impossible, there's one thing that I can find to do to give me that power and that joy back. And I learned that through this episode. I hope the audience does as well.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. I don't know if they cast the heroes or the directors first, but I feel like we all are connecting to our heroes in a really really amazing way that is making every episode feel so unbelievably personal on both sides of the camera, which I think is what allowing the audience, or is hopefully going to allow the audience to really connect. When I saw David in his casting reel and I read his history, it was insane because he's this kid who had all these things sort of put upon him because of the neighborhood he's from and the things that people saw outwardly about him. But all I read about him was that there was somebody screaming that I have a voice and I want to put my voice out into the world. And that is exactly what I felt growing up. I was told I was this, I was told I was going to be this, and I was told this is my path. And then it wasn't until I was like, no, I'm going to take a chance and do something else. And I was like, it would be amazing to be able to amplify this hero's voice because it deserves to be amplified. So it was amazing to be able to do this. And I'm getting the sense that all these directors are having that same experience, to be able to understand that, most importantly in this series, to understand that our stories, while they're unique to us, we're not alone. And other people are experiencing that. It's clear from both sides of the camera, and hopefully it's clear from the audience that I can relate to these things.
What I loved about working with the entire Culture House production team on this is that they wanted us to choose stories that personally meant something to us because they knew how special it'd be and how much we had more. I feel like I had more to offer because there were so many parallels in our stories, as a director and just as a young human. And I think for me, not only had I already been following Sofia and just a fan of her presence and platform, but I think as we had the opportunity to dive into our stories, there were so many parallels about, being two young Black girls that are in primarily academic spaces, but having these experiences that really did shake us, as well as the experiences that showed us that there was a community out there, the experiences that showed us that we were on the right paths. And so it was really fun to be able to direct an episode that meant so much to me and paralleled my own story, even coming from very supportive families and backgrounds. I think there was so much to mine when we had our whole families on set and being like, this feels mirrored almost. And I think like has been said before, we had an extremely diverse set, and it was so cool because every department was excited to figure out how to tell this story. And so it was just a really collaborative time because people were coming up with ideas mined from their own childhood and own experiences to say, well, what if we use the lighting this way to communicate what it feels like to be alone? And so I think because it was so personal, we were able to pour in a lot.
Well, thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And congratulations on the launch of Growing Up.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. I love the Muppets shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Big fan.